Welcome everyone to Haven of Horror. We finally got Enigma back. She left me hanging for a while, but it's okay. I'm just kidding. Life gets in the way. We know. Life comes first. Uh, the Scream reviews will be coming soon. We don't have a date on that. We're just kind of taking it one video at a time. As a reminder, I have started a Patreon for the channel. Um, if you would like to join that, the link will be in the description below. Get you access to our Discord, as well as choosing films for us to talk about. And hopefully Enigma will be there for some of those, just depending on scheduling and what the movie is. And as always, if you like these videos, you like this content, please consider hitting the subscribe button. And today we are talking about your choice of movie, which
Yeah.
I was on my radar from the general synopsis. Um, that and it went to Hulu. Like, I'm more inclined to watch something if I can watch it at home for no extra money. The movie is called Fresh, which is a really bad. Okay, it's a really bad title just because it's such a like generic one-word title, but it also does fit the movie. I just wish it was a little more specific, especially. I had a hell of a time trying to find like just the logo they used for this movie for the thumbnail. I
Yeah.
had to like pull some Photoshop magic I didn't know I could do out of my ass. So this movie stars Sebastian Stan, who of course is most well known for being the Winter Soldier and getting nothing to do in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and a bunch of other people that I had no idea who they were, but they were good actors. So let's start with the cast since we went over the one name in this movie. Did anybody else stick out to you, performance wise, or anything else in the cast?
So the lead actress, her name's Daisy Edgar Jones, and before this film, I had never actually seen her in anything. So I will say she did a phenomenal job, especially, when we start to talk more in depth about the film and like the transition of what happens. She really went from that like carefree, you know, up in the air type of person to, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be eaten. So it she's really good. I thought she was great. And I also liked her friend Molly a lot. She's also really good too. I don't know her name though, unfortunately, the actress's name.
So her name is Jonica Gibbs, and I thought she was giving a good performance, and I could see that kind of character existing because this is in a big city and things like that. Um, but honestly, I found her more annoying, but I think it's just a taste issue because if I met somebody like that in real life, I would also be really annoyed with them. Uh, and and she is kind of the catalyst for the choices that the main character makes. And you had messaged me before I watched this movie asking me who I thought the final girl would be, because you
Hmm.
weren't sure. I'm gonna have to say that it is very much Noah because the film is from her point of view, her perspective, and she is the one who kind of goes through an arc.
Hmm.
Mostly her arc is learning not to say fuck it when a random guy asks you to go away for the weekend because she's an idiot. um, so the first, was it 30 minutes of this movie are kind of your standard rom com.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't, I'm gonna be honest, if I hadn't known this was a horror movie, I would have shut it.
Yeah, it had that build up. Honestly, looking at all the films, because I'm a huge movie buff, looking at all the movies I've seen, I felt like this was the best intro to a movie. Because when things get real and like the credits roll, it's a complete 360, and I love it.
I don't know about best movie intro. It's good, but in
Okay, maybe
terms of
not the
a
best.
in terms of a movie, I think the biggest issue that this movie has starting out, like you said, things get serious really quickly. I think it might be too much of a tonal shift without earning it. I don't mind movies that start as one thing and become a completely different thing. My go-to example for that, and I don't know if you've seen this, but it's From Dusk Till Dawn. That movie
Yeah.
starts out as just a crime film, these two
Mhm.
guys on the run, and then becomes a vampire film, but it's tonally consistent. This
Mhm.
movie starts as like a goofy rom-com that you've seen a million times, and then just jumped the other direction, which was cool because I liked that tone. I
Mhm.
liked that tone when it gets serious. That's what I was there for. But then it also wants to be a goofy comedy whenever
Yeah.
Sebastian Stan is on screen.
So I do have a problem. So I don't think comedy is a good title for a genre. I feel like dark humor. Definitely dark humor, because I didn't outwardly laugh. It wasn't like a Chris Farley laugh, like, oh, he did something stupid, that's funny. It was more of a, oh, that's morbid and very dark type of a funny.
No, I agree with you. I was being more broad, I guess I should say. But I agree if you're looking at it in the specific subgenre of comedy, this is it's a dark comedy, the scenes with him.
Mm.
Which is cool because I do love a good dark comedy, and a lot of what they were doing with his character reminded me a lot of Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, where it's like this
Yeah.
guy's fucking nuts, but I like watching him because he's funny in a
Yeah,
morbid way.
yeah, I guess I didn't think of it like that. Definitely I see that, especially some of the things he says, like there's a scene where they're eating Chinese food and Noah's trying to get him to eat food and he's like, "Oh, I don't eat animals." It's like, "No, you don't, because you eat humans." Particularly female humans, but you learn that later on.
So let me ask you this then, because we're talking about Sebastian Stan's performance, and I would love to see him do more horror because he was hands down my favorite thing about this movie. Do you think that made him too likable in this movie?
Honestly, I kept going back and forth because I don't know if you know this, but the film was written and directed by female entities. The writer and the director. I think the writer has actually a comedy background from what I saw, like Step Brothers type of comedy. So it's interesting to see them come together and do this film. And I felt from a female perspective, making the guy likable is exactly what they wanted to do because you want the main character in a rom-com to end up with the guy like that. Like without knowing he's crazy and going to lock you up in his chamber of horrors or whatever, like that's like the presence of a rom-com. The awkward relationship, the guy that's quirky. I felt like that's what they were going for. So I kind of see the romantic comedy aspect and the fact that both of these women were involved in the creation of this film. They put an emphasis on that for sure. Definitely. Um, I I like the fact that they made him likable because it just makes it that much more realistic. There's more creep behind it.
Okay, I can see that. So yeah, and you had mentioned that. So we should mention this was written by Lauren Kahn, who was a big fan of horror, and was directed by Mimi Cave. I've never heard of either of these people, and they don't have Wikipedia pages, so I'm guessing this is like, fresh writer director pair. And I can see the reverence um for the horror genre, specifically slasher, because you had talked about and I disagree with you here, but you had talked about how Noah feels not doesn't feel like any other final girl in horror. I'm gonna disagree with you because I've seen this character done a million times. The reckless kind of, trying to be someone she's not girl who gets in a horrifying situation. That goes all the way back, I would even argue, to Psycho.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess what I was trying to say was going back to her friend Molly. I feel like Molly's more the final girl because she's the one that actually finishes him off. She rescues her friend. And not just rescues her out of a situation and they get chased type of rescue, but like they end up killing him. And she ends up saving both of the girls that, the whole film revolve around. So when I said she doesn't seem like the typical final girl, that's what I meant. She's not the only one that
Okay, I
finishes
see
it.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can kind of agree with that, although I would argue it's that situation we don't see a lot because usually final girls like she's the last one. But it's also kind of applying that rule for a specific subgenre to a different subgenre because this is absolutely not a slasher. There are rules to a horror movie. Okay, we watched Scream, we know this. Anyway, I would argue yes, they are a team, but at the end of the day, the final girl also refers to the protagonist of the film because, like, let's say, because I've been talking about it with someone else on the channel. I'm going to use Friday the 13th for an example. Jason is the antagonist, even though we're rooting for him. And the final girl is the protagonist, and the film is seen through her eyes. So in this case, Noah would still be the final girl because she is the protagonist, but she works with her friend Molly in a more of a team situation, which was interesting and reminded me more of Nightmare on Elm Street 3. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but that movie has a similar conceit where where there is a final girl, but she is working with another survivor to help stop the threat. Um, Specifically Nancy from the original. And you need to see that movie because it's amazing. It's so good. But I got sidetracked. So uh do you buy that Noah went so readily along with everything up until the shift?
I did hint some hesitation in there. Just because like they go out drinking for a first date and then like the second date they go back to, well, maybe the first and second kind of blend together, but they're always drinking. And her friend Molly, who's like, this guy, you meet him, he's probably married, the way he approached you, which she's right. And she's just like that second voice in her head, and you can see it that she has hesitation, but I think she's met this guy in an unconventional way based on what she's been doing that she kind of ignores those red flags, which as a woman, I can definitely attribute to the female influence behind this movie because I feel like women tend to do that a lot after so many times of, you know, horrible dates and horrible Tinder conversations. They meet somebody unconventionally. There's red flags, but they refuse to see it because it's not the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I
So it's
can see
like
that.
it's like modern dating. Like I know the synopsis of the film basically was like modern dating sucks, and that's kind of where this plays in. You meet some good-looking guy who is awkward in the grocery store, you're not going to think anything of it. But if you've got some creepy dude sending you nudes, like that's a completely different story.
I can see
So
that. And this
yeah,
is
she's
definitely kind of a satire on how dating is now.
yeah.
Um, I'm glad you mentioned that the first two dates kind of run together because that was another thing that I was thinking. I was like, okay, I can see where they're coming from with her. She's doing this to accept her friend's advice, and she's just like, tired of shitty dates. This is a guy that's nice to her. But I also couldn't tell how long they'd been together when he just spontaneously proposes this weekend getaway.
Yeah.
Because it kind of played like they'd slept together once. They'd been on like a date, slept together,
Yeah.
and then the very next thing he's like, "Let's go away for the weekend."
Yeah. I'm gonna be confident and say that's technically the second ever date, I guess. Like they stayed in, had Chinese food. That's when he said he doesn't eat animals. Um, and they drink a lot too, which drinking is always a part of this. Um, but yeah, I definitely the second quote quote date,
Well,
I
wait,
guess.
because I think I know what date you're talking about. But the date where they get drunk after eating Chinese food, that's the date where he drugs her, right?
No, that's when they go away. That's a separate
Oh,
one.
that's right. That's right. He doesn't drug her
Yeah.
until they get there.
Yeah, because in that scene, again, they're drinking. He's like, I put something in your drink. I put something in your drink. Can you can you guess what what the citrus is. And every time she takes a drink and gives an answer, and he's like, nope. And that's coaxing her to drink more to have the drug go in her system faster.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
that's
Um.
more intense of a date, I guess, if you want to consider that a date.
I Yeah, and that is something that I question because like I understand why she would agree to go.
Hmm.
But if somebody that I barely knew told me they put something in my drink and asked me to guess what it is, I'm gonna be like, hell no, I
Yeah.
ain't drinking this.
And the cool thing about that scene that it's just complete cinematography and directing influence. You don't suspect it because he's so nice and so quirky and like this seems to be going really well. Again, rom-com. But every time she takes a drink and then looks at him, the screen gets blurry and blurrier from her point of view.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the tipping point of something's not right with this guy.
Yeah, they definitely put some thought into how this movie looks and into the soundtrack. Because the first thing I noticed was the soundtrack. Because I think the movie starts with a song,
Yeah.
and it kind of set the tone that they would eventually be going for most of the film. It's tonally confused sometimes, but um, this movie also loves its musical montages. There's like
Yeah.
5 of them.
Yeah.
It was
I
like
yeah.
you could have cut these.
Well, okay. So I actually thought they were great. They gave me very Tarantino film like feels. So I think it fit because I when I saw them and it's so random. I also consider this a dark comedy. Django Unchained
Mhm.
has the same kind of random like musical scenes, maybe not to that effect, but it was giving me that vibe in the film, and I liked that 'cause I think it's great. It's kind of awkward, it's funny. It's the comedic relief you need in the middle of him cutting bodies up and eating them. So,
See, I liked the one where he's cutting up the bodies, and I would have kept that one. But I don't know if you need all of them. I can't remember off the top of my head now because I watched this last night. And I was really tired. Um, Especially because I have kind of a rule for horror. Your movie needs to be as close to an hour and a half as it can be. If you're not like George Romero or John Carpenter, your movie does not need to be 2 hours. And this movie's almost 2 hours. I was like, you don't need to
I didn't
be
know
two
that.
hours.
Yeah. Well, this scene specifically that I think is important is when he feeds her. I don't know if it's the first time or second time he feeds her people,
Yes,
basically.
all of that stuff was wonderful.
Yes.
And I will admit for a second there, because this is a dark comedy, I thought that they were gonna have her develop like legitimate Stockholm syndrome for him, and the movie was going to end with her replacing the blonde. And I was like, okay, that would be really cool. Not for like, oh, it's isn't it cool, that she's like fucked up now, but because too much horror doesn't have enough bad endings, and I love like a bad ending in horror movies, and that would have been hilariously dark.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, I'm gonna be on board if they do this. And I'm not upset with what they did with her manipulating him. I thought that was really clever. But it was also like, oh, now it's just a standard like he's gonna escape and kill the guy. I've seen this a million times.
Yeah. I felt I don't know, maybe it's just because like just watching it, I watched it twice in a short amount of time just to kind of pick up on stuff. He's kind of stupid. And I don't know if it's because he's one of those people that is easily manipulated or what it is, but he's kind of stupid.
So I noticed this too, and I disagree. I think he is actually very smart. That's not the problem. The problem is that he is emotionally unstable. Because
Okay.
yes, he is married, but I am pretty sure his marriage is a sham. And the movie hints that his wife is one of
Mhm.
his victims. So
Yeah.
I doubt they have a real loving relationship.
Mm.
And they don't go too much into his backstory, which is fine. Like he gives a simple explanation about how he didn't feel like a part of the world until he discovered the subculture of eating people. And I can't remember what it was that made him feel like an outsider. He says something, but that's what really made him connect. The way I read his character is that Noah is the first time that he has established a meaningful connection. So when she just acts like she's going to give him a chance, he is all too happy to take it because that's the only like stable emotional relationship that he's ever had, which is why it's so easy to manipulate. Because you can't be that stupid and do what he does and be successful at. You can't.
I can argue that, but I also agree with you at the same time.
And also, it would explain why, out of all the, because I assume he's been doing this for a long time. We don't know
Hmm.
how old he is, but Sebastian Stan's in his what, late 30s, early 40s. So he's probably been doing this for at least 20 years. That is why, out of all the girls that he's probably done this to, because we see that, shrine of girls that he's done this to, and Noah asks him, where's mine? And he's like, oh, it's with me. Or she asks, where's my stuff? That is why she is the only one that has been able to trick him into letting her escape. Because he didn't care about those other girls, but I think he legitimately cared about her in his own fucked up way.
Hmm. Yeah, and she learns that because he gives her things he doesn't give the other girls, like the magazine with the message in it. That's how she figures out, oh, I should manipulate this to my advantage and survive.
Mhm. So there's something that really distracted me, and I know we're all over the place, but it's just kind of whatever pops into my mind. So the first time she tries to escape, he punishes her by surgically removing the skin off her ass
Um, I think it's the whole region,
or
like
the
the
whole region.
yeah.
Okay, but here's what was distracting. So she's out of it for a couple days, and that makes
Hmm.
sense. But then she's fine.
She's not fine. You see her several times, like grabbing her side and like kind of walking like she just basically gave birth. So there's
Okay, then I
a
guess the
couple of
question
times.
is, how long was she down there?
Um, I think if I'm not mistaken, they say something between Molly and the bartender guy, which the bartender guy I like him a lot, but something about when Molly went to the house to confront the wife when she was also abducted, um, about my friend's been missing for 2 weeks. And I think there was a few days after that when the
So not
guys
even a full
decided,
month, right?
no, it's been a short amount of time.
Okay, so then I guess my point is by the end of the movie, we're still not under a full month. I
Hmm.
don't buy that she's doing everything she's doing still with the surgery he would have had to do to her.
Well, he also didn't do something very, I guess, life changing too. Like, yeah, it's uncomfortable to sit, but like you're not missing a leg, you know?
Right, but she was struggling to walk there for a while without having pain, right? So this movie expects me to believe that in under, let's say, under a week, if she's been there for 2 weeks, probably before the surgery happened, she goes from barely being able to walk to being able to run through the woods. I can't hear you again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
My headset shut off. I'm sorry.
No, you're
Um,
fine. I just wanted to make sure before you get too far into your point.
um, I think it was pure adrenaline because when she finally like when she was going to get her phone, she was like holding her side and like wincing and struggling.
Okay.
So I mean, it's you notice it because that was the question I had too, but she also wasn't wearing like tight clothes as well. So the acting had to be played up a little bit.
I want a movie that's a sequel to one of these where it explores the aftermath. Because
Yeah.
like he mutilated her.
Mhm. And her
But
friend.
oh, did he get the friend too? Because I wasn't sure about that.
he gave her mastectomy. So,
Ah.
yeah. And I think he did that because she humiliated him, basically, or tried to,
Mhm.
or
And
he
I mean,
humiliated. Yeah, like the scene where they're eating, I think they eat human meat 3 times in this film, where she gets drunk. This is like the final scene.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And she's like, "You saved the breast for last." And they start laughing.
I still kind of wish they had gone the dark humor route where she just like helps him run the business from now on. I think that would
Mm,
have been for. I think that would have been not laugh out loud funny, but it would have been like, oh, that's fucked up, but kind of funny. I don't know.
yeah.
Just it felt like they because this movie really embraces its premise and like it makes you buy everything, but then it feels like oh we got to. And maybe this isn't fair, and I'm just tired of the like we've seen this ending. She's gonna stop the bad guys. She's manipulated him. But I think this is the kind of movie you could get away with that because it's goofy anyway. He's one step away from being like Patrick Bateman.
Well, I think the wife is the symbolism for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she's so far gone by the
Yeah. But I think also she was far gone too because she didn't want to get caught.
end. Mm-hmm. So there's this one scene right after we first find out about the wife that she's in, where she's like holding her face, and it looks like
Yeah.
he's gonna pull her face off, but then we never come back to that. Did you get anything from that? Because I'm still confused.
Her husband's a cosmetic surgeon, and if she was one of his victims, he probably altered her face. But also, there's also a symbolism of there's a new younger person in my husband's life.
Okay,
So it could be the obvious and the symbolism at the same time.
okay. Yeah, it's hard to pick up all that on a first watch, but that's what makes it interesting to have these discussions. Uh, I did not have time to watch it twice, unfortunately. Oh, let's see. So we talked about. Oh, can we just talk about how her blind date at the beginning is almost inhumanly dumb?
Oh, Chad.
And
Perfect name.
at first, I was like, "What the fuck? This doesn't feel like a real person." Then I, oh, because this is a dark comedy, they're playing up his antics,
Yeah.
uh,
But I'm
to
gonna be
the
honest
nth
with
degree.
you. I'm gonna be honest with you. As somebody who did the Tinder thing, they're like that. I am not exaggerating.
That is why I don't
Unfortunately.
date.
Funny enough, met my boyfriend on Tinder, and he watched that with me, and he he actually made a comment. He's like, "I'm so sorry, girls have to go through that." Like, yeah, they really act like that. I actually wrote. I have some notes about Chad.
Okay.
Um, where are they? I feel like this is a good like he was a good introduction to this film because it makes Steve slash Brendan so much more likable, even though he's
I wrote
eating
that
pussy.
exact same thing.
Yeah.
That this movie makes a really good case for why she is attracted to him, and these are the kind of
Mhm.
dates that she's getting.
Yes. And it also kind of represents too like the things women deal with when they're not interested. They have to deal with the hostility of the guy not being able to handle rejection. So when Steve comes into the picture, you're kind of expecting the same thing, but he's not like that. He's crazy, but he's not Chad.
Yeah. Now I will admit with that stuff, because I obviously don't have the same perspective as you do, because A, I don't date, and B, I'm a guy. So I'm glad that you're able to bring that perspective, and that is interesting because I hadn't really thought about that. Because, like I said, there's many reasons I don't date. Number one is online dating's a nightmare. Uh, but yeah, that is interesting, and I kind of wish I kind of wish it hadn't been so truncated. But at the same time, I think it fits for the like this is very over the top. Like none of this is super serious.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
the scarf in the Asian food makes me laugh because that is
Yeah.
something I would do. I would accidentally dip my like scarf or clothes into the food because I'm nervous or you know
Would you insult the waitress at the same time?
that I would not do.
Yeah. I I don't know. I like how they started the film with that date because it gives you a sense of hopelessness, which she does express in the next scene telling her friend about the date in their boxing class.
That's the other important thing I think is important to this movie is this is a woman who is like I'm done. I'm gonna be alone forever. I'm giving up on dating, and then she meets this guy. So then
Mhm.
the question is, was he targeting her, or was this all like freak of nature? If he hadn't gone to the grocery store that night, none of this would have.
Again, female perspective. You might get sick of hearing this, but um, women who go to the grocery store alone are often targeted because they're by themselves. And that's just for everything. Um, and she was there late at night too. So it kind of gives a sense of like, oh, hey, this person's easily accessible. They're not with anybody, it's dark out, the store's empty. I think maybe he just stumbled upon an opportunity. Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of background as to where he comes in from. He's just talking about his niece saying F you, there's no such thing as cotton candy grapes. And the whole conversation starts, and you're like, okay, where
Okay,
did that come from?
so you do think it was just like right place, right time? It wasn't like he
Yeah,
picked. Okay,
he
I
did
think you're
like her
right.
because you learn later on during their first date, because she says, yeah, my dad's dead. I don't have a relationship with my mom, and I have no family. You learn that the other women also are the same. They don't have family. And
Oh, you know what? You're right. So he
that's
had to have done
actually
some
real.
research.
Yeah, it's a very real thing. Like that's a very real life
No,
scenario.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, I don't have much else to say. To say anything in your notes that you want to go over?
I'd like to say that Noah is very relatable. I feel like some of the things that she went through and some of the things said to her, at least women, I know men probably can relate too. They've probably been through the same thing. And I like that's added because I feel like a lot of horror films are just super completely different. Like, you know, you can't relate to that. It's not like I what I'm trying to say is I like films like this when there's truth behind it because it feels more real and more scary. Like it can happen. You know what I mean? Like it can
Yeah,
happen to somebody in real life.
I like those in for what they are. But if you give me the choice between, let's use this movie for example, and the Chucky show that just came out, which is completely like absurd and insane. If I had to pick between one of them, I'm gonna pick Chucky every time because it's goofy and I like to see what creativity. But I can see what you're saying, whereas this is something more real, and I think there is room for that. And I do appreciate films like this or like the original Halloween, which is a very down to earth, real. Um, I think the only issue that I have with something like this is, like I said, the tonal whiplash is a little much because, and I get what they're going for. For him, this is just another day in the office. It's all just he's having fun. And for her, she's terrified. But I don't know if that works in a movie when you're switching tones like every other scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess the tonal shift and the suddenness of them can kind of get into Noah's perspective. Like she doesn't really know what to think. Like, oh, I'm chained up, or oh, this guy's nice to me and he's not hurting me like the other girls. because she does talk to the other girls, and they've been there a long time, and one of them's going crazy, and she's not being treated the same way. So it's a good symbolism for how she is internally.
And I agree with you on Noah. But for me, I think it's all in performance because on
Hmm.
paper, other than the online dating thing, this is like stock horror girl. You know, she doesn't have a relationship with her parents. She has a best friend. She's scared until she has to be tough. You know, we've been doing that archetype since 1970 with Halloween or 1978. I forget what year Halloween came out. But what makes that trope stick around is finding perform actresses like this that can bring new life to that stereotype. And Molly is still annoying. I'm sorry, but she's very annoying. uh, this entire movie is her fault. You can't change my mind.
Not her fault. You're
Listen,
projecting in the wrong place.
no, listen. None of this would have happened if she hadn't told Noah to just say fuck it and be spontaneous. This whole
But
movie is Molly's fault.
in her defense, though, she thought it was super creepy that some rando is like, "Hey, let's go on a romantic getaway. I met you literally 72 hours ago."
Well, yeah, but by then it's too late. She's already put the idea in Noah's mind. And I'm not entirely serious on this. I'm just messing around. But we love advice, folks. So for our arbitrary rating system, I'm gonna give this a 3 out of 5 per the letterbox review. And it's okay, but me personally, because I'm not interested in dating, I can't connect to the online dating portion, and I don't have the perspective of you, you know, where you connect to what she's going through as a woman. Whereas I can sympathize for her, I also, eh, she's, I feel bad for her, but I don't know. That probably makes me sound like a monster, but I watched too many horror movies to be like, oh my god. What say you? What out of 5 are you gonna give this?
I'm gonna give this a 4.5 out of 5. And it's not so much the script. I love the cinematography, the placement of the music, the different scenes that are Noah's point of view, like the drinking scene where she's drugged. Just the attention to detail. I just love it. And also, I have to say, when he's chopping up that leg, it was very realistic. I didn't like that.
So I can't believe I forgot this, but I also have to mention they're clearly looking at Hannibal Lecter for no matter what you do, if you do a cannibal in cinema. But anyway, that is gonna be it for us. Thank you for coming on the show. It's always fun to have you on. And we will see you guys next time. Hopefully with Scream 3. I'm probably gonna have to rewatch it at this point. Dear God. Now, have a good night, everybody.